It is a result that makes a lot of sense, but one that I think hardly anyone had on their bingo card. Jey Uso has won the men's Royal Rumble match. We'll be talking about this and everything else that came out of the Royal Rumble event tonight right after this.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.
All right, well, what a huge night in WWE to break down. And I'm joined by the founder himself, Mr. Lucas Jackson is here to talk WWE Royal Rumble with me. As I say in the intro, man, as a result that makes a lot of sense, but still one that is very, very surprising. So let's bring in Lucas for his instant reaction to the ending there, first of all, of what we saw on WWE Royal Rumble, buddy. I think you're muted. You can't hear me. I can't hear you. All right, we'll bring him back in just a moment. But man, what a huge ending we saw to the Royal Rumble there. Look, it's not just the men's Rumble we're going to be breaking down. Of course, we're going to be breaking down what happened in the women's Rumble, where Charlotte Flair was the victor as well. One that I think was a little bit more kind of, I guess, predictable in some ways. And talk about predictable, the result for this match, Cody Rhodes winning the title, was also predictable, but still an incredible match there. Motor City Machine Guns DIY was a great match as well. We'll be talking about that very soon. But again, the big story coming out of this one is the fact that Jey Uso is going to WrestleMania. Holy crap, says Sludge Sports. This was Triple H's biggest risk. That's a big point there. We'll talk about that as we go on. Gary, good to see you, Gary, in the chat, mate. Scott, that was underwhelming. Not a fan, says Gary. And Sludge Sports says, not going to lie, this is the worst women's Rumble ever. Gary says, where was Dom and Ray and The Rock? We got Dom and Ray, just not together. And yeah, no arrival of The Rock. Let's see if we can bring Lucas back in now, see if this works this time around. Lucas, can you hear me?
No, I can hear you.
How you doing, mate? What do you think about that last kind of scene? Jey Uso yeeting the way to WrestleMania, mate.
I mean, this is crazy.
Mad.
And I still don't know whether I like or dislike it. It's one of those, isn't it?
Me neither. I don't know how I feel.
I definitely don't hate it. So I'm not in. We're not in 2014, 2015 kind of era Rumble where you're like, okay, this is awful. Like this is absolutely bad. I don't love it. You know, so it's somewhere in the middle, but it is just a like shock of how it all went down. And obviously, you know, what we spoke about a bit earlier with this whole surprise element of the Rumble and the entries. But now we have the surprise of obviously how it was done. Because, yeah, when it got to a certain stage, you know, we all before it, like, oh, yeah, Cena's winning then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cena's winning. And then he didn't win. And it's like, well, how do we feel about that? Because if he had won, then we'd all be moaning, oh, predictable, shouldn't stay up for it, blah, blah. You know, I don't know what Cena versus whatever. But then he hasn't won. So now we're sitting here going, oh, but that thing that was predictable that we're going to dislike, we now don't know what to feel about.
Yeah, we're almost built up into this like feeling of ready to be annoyed, but we're not allowed to be annoyed. Like it's a weird feeling.
Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, it does seem that, I mean, I don't know, like what's going to come out this week, you know, dirt sheet wise, but it does feel like something has definitely changed in this. Like, I don't know, it just feels like going into this, it very much felt like John Cena's match or Punk's match.
Yeah.
And, you know, Punk was eliminated much earlier on, not much earlier, but, you know, earlier on than the final two or whatever. And then it now has become Jey Uso's match. And obviously there are some obstacles in the way of Jey before Mania. So obviously, you know, his thing could change before then. But it does at the moment seem that Jey Uso will challenge for a world championship in a singles match at WrestleMania.
Crazy.
That's
crazy.
Bonkers to think where we were with Jey Uso. But I think they're looking at the crowd, aren't they? They're looking at the crowd. And just that crowd is insane for him.
I mean, that's exactly it, man. That's what I said on the intro. Like, it's one that makes a lot of sense when you look at those kind of factors, but one that none of us had on our bingo card because, like, yes, we've all agreed over the past not just 6 months, but year to two, maybe 3-4 years, when you really trace it back, that Jey Uso has been an MVP of the WWE roster and deserves the position he's in. And you look back, like, even if you look at those two guys that ended, Jey Uso and John Cena, like, if you see those guys in the ring 10, 15 years ago, it's like, oh yeah, Jey Uso is about to be thrown out by John Cena in like this, 20th minute into the match. Never mind the two of them being at the end. You would never believe it back in the day. But now we've got to a point where it's believable, and he has thrown out John Cena. We'll get to John Cena a little bit more later on. But yeah, the Jey Uso factor is really interesting. Now, what disappoints me in some ways is, don't get me wrong, he had a world title match last week. And I do think that is problematic. But at the same time, if you're looking at, like you say, the metrics of the crowd and how people react to him, is he a wrestler that deserves to be in the main event of WrestleMania? Yeah. If you judge on that, yeah. But the thing is, there is so many stories to tell, and we'll talk about the stories that have come out of the Rumble match itself, that it's kind of just, it's wild that we've come away thinking that the guy who has the most over entrance and biggest catchphrase at the moment is a confusing choice to go to WrestleMania and main event it, which should not be the case. But it just kind of highlights the strange thing about Jay's rise and also the way the roster is at the moment as well. Of course, that's the big story. We're going to get back to the men's Money in the Bank Royal Rumble, I should say, in just a moment. But let's kind of bring it all the way back to the very beginning for a moment, Lucas. Let's talk about the intro to the show, and let's talk about the women's Royal Rumble match. Of course, it did start out with Stephanie McMahon coming out with a nice little intro. It's good to see her back, of course, on the screen as well. And it started out with a pretty impressive women's Royal Rumble match. I was thinking about halfway through the show, as much as I enjoyed the other matches, that match might be the biggest takeaway from the night as far as newsworthy events, because we had a few kind of surprises and things like that. What were your general thoughts of the women's Royal Rumble?
Yeah, I thought it was actually quite solid. I think they definitely, in both Rumbles, more in the men's, but in the women's, did stack the back end of the Rumble like quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I do think they could have dealt with a few of the surprises being a bit earlier on in the match, like a bit more spaced out. It did feel like there was that middle section really where it did start to lag and get a bit slow, and they didn't have a lot of elimination to take for a long time. They kind of built up, like everyone for a time being. But I mean, obviously, I can't talk about every single moment in the match. Obviously, it was a long match, over an hour. But obviously, I guess some headlines are coming from it. Number one, we did get the return of Alexa Bliss. We discussed it on our
huge.
Our kind of kick-off, build-up show. And Alexa Bliss did return. And she did return seemingly under the weird kind of Bray Wyatt version of herself.
Bit of a mix between the two, I'd say, character-wise.
Yeah.
It was definitely a bit of a mix.
Yeah. I couldn't hear the theme. It started like our old one, but then it changed. I don't know. The music has just been really poor.
I thought it was her old one. Yeah.
Yeah.
The beginning definitely was.
But yeah, she returned. She got a nice pop when she came back. It has been 2 years since she returned. We didn't get Becky Lynch, which was, I think, probably shocked to a lot of the Give Me a Whole Year. Thanks for them for joining us earlier of the way. Podcast. They were very convinced that Becky Lynch would be there. But we did not get Becky Lynch. But I think that back end, Trish Stratus at like 49 years old. Like,
she really 49.
49 years old and entering a Royal Rumble match as she did.
Wow.
And of course we got the surprise entry at number 30, which will be, I guess, a talking point, particularly with John Cena also being on the show, I guess, is Nikki Bella. She was number 30 in the Women's Royal Rumble. And it created, we had Nia Jax, who also, I think, she got the most eliminations in any single women's Royal Rumble match. I
think she threw about 6 out once, right? She threw like loads of them over at one time.
Yeah, she did. They all got they had a weird kind of spot where they all kind of got on the apron one by one, and Nia just kind of like pushed them all off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But eliminations, I guess. But I thought the back end of the match was like really like quite good. Yeah, it was really good. I just kept, this happened in both Rumble matches, but I just kept laughing at the fact that the entrances were taking so long. By the time some people got to the ring, it was the countdown timer again.
Mate, the one that made me laugh the most was Sonya Deville. Like, it was meme worthy. They showed her running, and then they showed the ring, and then they showed her running, and I thought, please show the ring and show her one more time running, and that's exactly what they did. I don't think they did it on purpose, but it was literally run, ring, run, ring, run, ring, and I was like, oh my gosh, it looks so far. And I think it is, as much as I enjoy the Rumble getting bigger and better, like, we assumed it was 65k, they said it was 70,000 in attendance, which is incredible. It looked amazing. Couldn't see an empty seat, but when it's the Rumble, there are some problems that come with that. One is the length of the ramp, and like you say, how long it takes you to get down there.
I think it's the fact that it curves as well, so it's
I like a curved ramp. Don't get me wrong, but with the Rumble, it's tougher. And then you've got also the fact that there's smaller screens, and we've talked about for ages. We could be here all night talking about this, but as you mentioned earlier on, the terrible theme songs these days, when you're like, who's that? And the one saving grace before was like the big Tron saying the graphic of the name. We can't even see that at the moment, so it's making that even tougher as well. So while you gain in one sense of spectacle, it takes away in another sense, which is a bit of a pain.
Yeah, like, I think obviously the stadium shows, we can probably have a whole podcast episode on, I guess, because they create this different kind of atmosphere. That obviously in the arenas is much different, and so obviously I do think that as much as Jey Uso was hugely over, there would be people going, oh, he wasn't as over as maybe, but yeah, you go to Raw and you see the reaction in an arena. Damn, like, it is something. But in terms of the women's Rumble, like, I think in terms of the presentation of the Rumble, I had a few gripes. Like, number one, lots of the big screen is leaving it to, like, you're kind of having to wait too long to figure out who's coming out, and then because it's then taken too long to get out as well, it's like sometimes it's like, oh, okay, and then you're leaving that reaction a bit. Now, controversial, Scott. What did you think of the timer thing?
I'm glad you brought this up. Look, I'm really mixed because for a lot of the time on screen, I just thought it was in the way. I liked the information it showed, and I do get it, but even that's tricky as well. So I did make a few notes about it. So basically what we're referring to is at the bottom of the screen, you might notice it was a long graphic that went about just over 3/4 of the way at the very bottom, but quite tall as well. It talks about what I liked about it, who was active, who was eliminated, what the next number was. That was cool to keep up with things. It showed the flags on their entrances as well to show where each wrestler was from in the world, which is quite cool. Really gives that global sense that we've been talking about with WWE lately as well. But again, it just felt too big, and I also felt like it was problematic for WWE because there will be a time where they want to pretend that they don't know what's going, like they'll want to be like, everybody forget what the next number is, or everybody forget how many people have been eliminated. And we've seen so many kind of stories created in the Royal Rumble where they mess around with the rules. And let's be honest, man, like, there's been years where you'll watch it and it's 90 seconds and then all of a sudden it's 50 seconds and then it's 130 seconds. Like, they mess around as much as they want. Now, who's to say going forward that they've not decided not to do any of that, and that's why they feel confident to do this? But I do think there is a potential kind of problem here in the future as far as, look, we know they try and squeeze things in and twist the rules a little bit here and there. So I think that's problematic. But I will say I did like the presentation of it as far as the idea behind it. I just don't think the execution was great.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it could have been almost like an app thing, they could have had separately. Like, I think there's always going to be people like, well, we exist because of it, I guess. But there will be people that are happy to talk about statistics, talk about that kind of stuff and the facts and all that kind of stuff. But I think having it on the screen was very evasive. I think as well because it was an overlay to the action. I think if it had, I don't know, actually, because thinking about this, it might have also been awful too, because the picture would have been smaller. But it would have been where the picture was a bit smaller and then that was at the bottom. So I'm still seeing the full picture, but then it would have annoyed a bit as well. So I don't know. I just think I can see what they're going for, and I appreciate the information that was there. But it also was like very fast moving and very like, just a bit excessive maybe. I don't know. No offense, like, everyone knows after number 14, number 15, right? Like, you're not supposed to, I mean, I could have dealt with that little information, number 15. Like, I know that's coming. Like, I wasn't sitting there going, oh, I wonder if number 20 is going to be out before number 15.
But sometimes you do forget though. You're like, where are we at with this? Especially if you're doing if you're doing a little bit of a sweepstakes at home or something like that. It's helpful for that. But look, I understand. Not everyone's doing that.
Out, though, doesn't it? It just says the number when they come
out. It does. Yeah.
It's not like. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, how these people have survived in the 80s and 90s of the Rumbles. You know what I
mean? True. I'm going to quickly run through some of these comments here as well before we get back onto the action here in the Rumble itself. We'll get to some, and we won't react to all of these just yet, but I want to kind of shout out Sludge Sports again. What the frick was the point of Ludwig Kaiser? Of course, he weren't there for so much long. Gary says he has so much potential. Rumble wasn't even in the final four. A very unpredictable Rumble. That's a good point. We'll get to that in just a moment. We're so excited for number 30. Then remember, forgot about Logan Paul. Gary's disappointed he stayed up for this. Look, Gary, I think it was a good show. I got to be honest. I do think it was a good show. There are some problems with it. We'll break those down as we go throughout this instant reaction. Sludge Sports says one big negative was of the men's Rumble is that some of these talented wrestlers were dumped, like who expected Carmelo to be out first and then dumped Andrade, Sammy, Ludwig, Dom, and some more. But look, there's 30 people in the match. Someone's got to go out early, right? I did feel like the roster felt really stacked when you looked at how many people were in it and how many people weren't in it, by the way. A lot of big names: Grayson Waller, Austin Theory, Viking Raiders. None of them in it, for example. Street Profits, of course, they show up. We'll talk about that in just a moment as well. Another negative, says Sludge, is Giant Ass and Just Strip. Of course, yeah, we've been talking about that as well. Let's get to a few more. Greg says, don't sound too good. Is that in reference to us earlier on? I don't know. What was that about, Greg? Really disappointed, says Gary. No Rock. LA Knight was funny. Good to see LA Knight showing up. It felt like it was a big spot, even though it didn't feel like he was going to win it, which is wild considering the past few years he's had as well.
I agree.
Gary feels like the timer was a joke as well. Also, Sludge says about superstars getting dumped. I forgot about Nakamura. Yeah, that wasn't great. It was not a good look for Nakamura. It goes back to that comment we mentioned on the build-up show, right, about champs not being in it. A, to kind of not take up a space, but B, maybe to kind of protect him as well. Vortex says we can all admit that the fight between John Cena and Jey Uso kept us 100%. Mate, I went into the final three thinking I don't want any of them to win, and I came out thinking, well, that was fun. So, again, we'll get to that in a bit more detail in a moment as well. But, yeah, thanks for your comment, buddy. Can't believe that Seth turns... That is a great point. Seth did turn heel. Seth turned heel. We're going to get to that as well. Tony says, I'm gutted Dirty Dom didn't win the Rumble. The vein on your weenus is back as well. Says Logan Paul is an absolute legend for eliminating CM Punk. Oh, you hurt me in the soul right there when you say that. Vortex says, I'm feeling kind of mad. Charlotte won the Rumble. Let's get back to that, Lucas. That's how the Women's Rumble did end up, of course. Charlotte Flair did end up the winner. Look, I went into this event thinking, yeah, of course, Charlotte Flair's going to win it. And that's exactly what happened. So I wasn't too offended by that. We got some great moments. Again, we won't run through them all. But we did get some surprises. Jordan Grace, of course, showed up at number 19. A great spot, actually, in this was Jordan and Naomi hugging. And Bianca getting jealous. Because I think it really did sow the seeds of a potential heel turn from Bianca and just kind of reminded us of that EST in NXT. But also the Jade Cargill storyline that is surely about to come as well. So that was a nice little seed to that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, there's as much as there's obviously a lot we've got to unpack, and obviously we probably won't get time to unpack it all tonight, guys, because it is almost 4 o'clock in the morning over it. But I do think that. Yeah, there's a lot that wasn't done, and one of the main ones, the women's side, is the Jade Cargill story. It is still going on, and it's a case of, is it going to be wrapped up anytime soon? Because, I mean, I don't know if they can stretch this out to Mania, being deadly honest.
I think they could go to SummerSlam, because it's a slight seed. I think there's a long way. Like, you could bring her back at Mania, because she didn't turn heel, Bianca. You know, it's just a seed.
Oh, I think in terms of Bianca, if you want to turn Bianca villain, that's fine. But I think if it's still going to be about this Jade Cargill thing, I don't know. I don't know how much longer you can go with this. But it does seem, obviously, they are eyeing up Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. to obviously challenge those tag belts, which may get the tag belts off of them. Though I could also see Triple H want to do the tag champ as a tag champ thing at Mania again, which I actually wouldn't actually mind this year if it meant that obviously the men's tag belts get on, because I think that's the trade-off, I guess. Like last year was the men's tag belts in one match, weren't they? Both belts. But obviously this year, if they're looking to do have the tag belts defended, they will need to be separate because of how they have it on the story. But yeah, the main takeaways of the Women's Rumble, like I think the Charlotte winning was like, it felt like that was the right thing to do. I was really shocked that Roxanne Perez got an amazing show, and I mean, I truly mean an amazing showing in the Rumble. That is, I think that is Triple H's ultimate message now that he's sending to the people in NXT. And even onto that new show they announced today called Evolve, which I guess is like going to be like the NXT to NXT in a weird way.
Yeah, it takes the place of Level Up, but of course, got the old Evolve brand in.
I think it's just showing, look, that you're going to get treated well on the main roster now. There's no like you're going to be a joke act. Like, it is bonkers to think Roxanne Perez was the runner-up in the Women's Royal Rumble.
Mate, she came in at number 3 as well, and I think she's now got the record for the longest female in the Rumble, which is insane. Those 3 completely separate facts are massive for Roxanne Perez.
Well, I will say, WWE, can we just ease off now on these people lasting a long time in the Rumble? Like, I think we've got
pull back a bit.
Where it's a bit dangerous now. Like, we're coming like a Christopher Nolan or like a Martin Scorsese. Hours. We're gonna, like, it's getting a bit much now. We get it. People can last an hour. Look, that's fine, but let's just stop it now. No one needs to go any longer. In my opinion, in either match. I mean, Gunther's record like an hour and 15 minutes. Like, it's just going to get ridiculous.
Yeah, we can't keep going. Yeah,
people in there for 3 hours. Like, but no, I think Roxanne Perez having a fantastic showing. I know there were some people that be a bit gutted about Jordan Grace getting eliminated a little bit early, but I think I've always felt the Rumble. It's about the stuff you do in the match. Like, the elimination is obviously part of it. Obviously, the 29 people have to get thrown out. But I think the stuff that you do. That is the calling of what you do. And Jordan Grace is an amazing showing. She came out, she got a massive pop. Everyone, she's known to the audience now. She hung her own amongst the best in the company.
Yeah.
For a long period of time. She wasn't dumped out by, Candice LeRae, for example. She got a big pop, and I think she was treated like a star. I think that's basically what should have been the goal. But obviously other people such as like Roxanne Perez, like we mentioned, and Liv Morgan as well, had another good showing this year. Needed that pop more. Claps for Roxanne Perez in final third. Again, she entered. Interesting that is. She entered the same number that Bayley broke her record from. So I think obviously going into NXT Vengeance Day, which is in a couple of weeks, obviously the triple threat match for the NXT Women's Championship is Julia, Bayley, and Roxanne Perez face each other. And that's very integral. This whole Roxanne has upped Bayley with the record, obviously the Iron Woman record, but obviously couldn't actually win the match. So I guess that can all tie into obviously all this, what's going on. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Roxanne and Bayley, in a singles contest. Don't know if that happened on NXT Stand Deliver, or if that does happen on the WrestleMania card. I would be open to both. I think this, that is definitely a way to go, because it does seem obviously both women are not going to be part of the main women's championship picture. Yeah. On the main roster at least, but perhaps on an NXT where there's a bit more time to do those things. But I think those are the main takeaways. I mean, Alexa Bliss as well, you already touched upon. Did you expect Alexa Bliss to kind of come out the way she did, or would you?
I think, again, I feel like it was a mixture of the two characters, and I think that's the best way to do it. There was lovely nods. I don't know if you recognised the thing on the back of her jacket that said Fiend, but had a little small R that said Friend. She had a new Lily doll with a 6 in the eye for the Wyatt 6, and they're selling merch already, as they should be, don't get me wrong. It was a lovely kind of gesture in that way. I don't know what it means for her going forward, but I just think it showed just what we said on the build-up show, man, that she's a massive star. She's a big part of the WWE kind of roster if they want to position her in that way. And she's such a talent. And she got I think the biggest reaction of the night, as far as surprises go, at least, So yeah, really, really happy with her presentation. Yeah, just happy overall with the Women's Rumble. I think it was the result that I expected. So I think I'd set myself up for a Charlotte win, even though it's not what I'd pick outright. I kind of settled on that a week ago. So everything else is a bonus, essentially. Just going to quickly get to some of these comments here as well. Gary says, disappointed, so much potential. He's not happy, Gary. Vortex says, basically, we're getting Jey versus Gunther in Mania. Cody versus Roman, also because Jey wouldn't go for the Universal Championship, so he wouldn't want to go after Gunther's instead, and Roman wants to reclaim. We'll get to that in just a moment, but you also say, because this is relevant to this match, AJ Lee never coming back to WWE. Sludge says never. Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest, I was quite surprised that AJ Lee didn't show up. I think never is not the way I'd go with it. I think it's going to happen, but I am kind of surprised it didn't happen this year.
Yeah, it does almost feel that this year we're kind of built for it. But, whatever reason it wasn't. But I would say that maybe the reason that it seems to be is that they did, Trish Stratus aside, just decided to focus on NXT and main roster talent, And so I think if that was the trade-off, then, as much as we can maybe moan about it and be like, oh, I wish, maybe that's best. If Aisley wants to come back, there's other routes for her to come back. But I do kind of think, what Sam was saying earlier on our build-up show, I do kind of think that some of that rings true where to a certain part of the audience, we do care and love and want AJ Lee, but to the modern audience, she's from that era, sadly, where, women's wrestling wasn't at its best. And I think, there is always that question of bringing someone back like that. Are you going to open up? What kind of reaction are you going to elicit from the audience? But yeah, I think overall as well, Alexa Bliss, being the return, I think it would have been overshadowed if obviously AJ Lee and or Becky Lynch had been part of the match. I think it was the right kind of call. Yeah, overall, I don't really have much else to add to that match. I think obviously we all predicted what would happen. I'm most likely going to be seeing a Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton showdown.
Yeah, you'd imagine.
I guess the only thing I have to take from this is, and I've always felt this about Charlotte, is I don't see how she can be the babyface. So I think they're going to have to do something different.
Yeah, Tiffany feels like she's switching anyway. But she wasn't very heelish tonight. She was in that middle kind of ground. But I get what you're saying. I think both those characters are at the moment, and that is the match I expect to see. But Tiffany seems to be moving into the face kind of persona at the moment, so that would make quite a bit of sense. A few more comments on the women's before we move on to the next match. Tony says Chelsea Green was the best part about the Women's Rumble. That was cool. Piper knocking her out by accident was a bit of a shame. Didn't see any Matt Cardona actually, which I actually thought he might even show up in that match, but it didn't happen. But hey, that's another story for another day. Casper says, can't believe we didn't see Becky Lynch, but 9 out of 10 for me. Jey Uso was a surprise. Thanks for joining us, Casper. I saw you on the build-up show, and it's great to have you back with us once again, as it always is as well, I should say, to have Sludge Sports with us, who says Chelsea Green got disrespected. She should have made it to 30. We're going to get to a few more of these comments as we make our way through. Either way, Jey versus Gunther, Jey versus Cody will be a W match. If you smash that like button, as Gary says, give us a like down below. He's not a big fan of Charlotte, though, calls him dead wood.
Gary, was anything you did like him?
I know, Gary, come on. Any surprises, surprise appearances that you guys hoped for both of the Rumbles? Yeah, I hoped for Cardona, didn't get it. I think the one I hoped for the most was probably Alexa Bliss, and I did get it. So, and AJ Lee, I really want to see AJ Lee, to be honest. So, I was more open to surprises in the women's. I felt that was the one that was more likely to give us some, and it clearly was. It was nice to see Nikki Bella back at the end as well. Let's move into the match that came straight after that, though. Of course, the 2 out of 3 falls match, which I was surprised that it wasn't a super long match, but I think that was probably the best thing, because already after the first Rumble match, I felt like it was risky to have a long match. But I think these guys pulled it off, man. I think they did really well. DIY did that fake tag to get the first fall, which was very clever. Skull and Bones from Motor City Machine Guns, of course, made it 1-1. A lovely trio woe spot that I thought was really cool for Motor City Machine Guns. And then loads of amazing, as you always see from the Machine Guns, tag moves. moves until it looked like they were going to get a win. And then sadly, I feel completely ruined the match was Street Profits coming out and just beating both teams up. It felt really stupid. Like I've seen this before when you've got someone just being like, I want to beat you for the belt, so I'm helping you, but I also hate you, so I'm going to hurt you after I help you. But it didn't make sense for the Street Profits who came out in, you know, hooded tops and not their usual kind of colorful clothes in black hoodies so that no one knew who they were, and then used the weapon. It felt very heelish. And then they were like, but we just want to win the belts off of guys we don't like. And I just thought that was really weird. It was a weird way to end what I thought was actually becoming a really good match. What are your thoughts on it?
This to me, it's going to go down as it's a victim of this 4-on-5 match card format that Triple H has had. Because sadly, what it leads to is the guys who aren't regularly on the pay-per-views just coming out to crickets, because the first half of the match was a struggle because neither team really got any reaction on the entrance, and then they kind of started getting somewhat. And the first fall, bless them, like the first fall was I barely recognize it happened at one point because there was no reaction to it. The back end of the match was solid because both teams are solid at what they do. So once it got to like the bigger tag moves, the bigger tag spots, you started biting, and the crowd got more into it. I think the stipulation didn't help either. Because 2 out of 3 falls, it does lead to like slow. Usually, you lose to slow matches, and they tried their best to negate that by getting the first fall quite quickly, and even getting the equaliser quite quickly as well, and it not being a long match either. But what it led to, but then ultimately, obviously, the end part, I just thought, I'll be deadly honest, I thought it was garbage. I thought that having the Street Profits, because the thing is, they got attacked, and I can't remember when they got attacked now. And they got attacked in the weeklies like 2 months ago.
And that's what kind of led to
DIY.
Yeah, that's where their kind of heel turn came from.
Yeah, but then they come back and seem to help DIY.
Yeah.
And they attack DIY afterwards. It doesn't make any sense. Personally, I think the better way to do it, as much as it would have led to like a no contest, would have been them coming out attacking both teams during the match actually happening. Or just doing the typical, after DIY win, however they were going to win, how the Street Profits come out, get a big babyface pop. Because isn't it, as much as this show is already kind of dragging, which we can't address in a second, don't get any worry. Why wouldn't you want to add like a guaranteed pop for the entrance of the cups and stuff coming out, and coming out in the crowd, and then them just facing up DIY, and just do the tag team version of pointing at the WrestleMania sign, and that's what they want. Like if they want to do Street Profits and DIY, just book the match. Like I don't see why you have to go this weird way of, essentially cheapening this match. It seemed like a very baffling decision. Because I recently watched Bludgeon Brothers attack on New Day and the Usos in a tag match, and I just thought that obviously led to a triple threat tag match at WrestleMania, and I just felt like that's just a much better way of doing. Obviously, I guess yes, like the Street Profits aren't exactly like the Bludgeon Brothers, but still, it's a much better way of kind of just saying this is what we want to do. So we're giving you this, but we want to actually do this. And it's like, okay, but you can only tease that if what's to come is better. And so it's a case of now we don't know, like because the Street Profits attacking baby faces, are they villain? They're attacking their villains, and now they're baby face again. It's like, what are we seeing?
And we already had that weirdness with him already, like about a year or two ago with Bobby Lashley. That terribly failed heel turn they did.
Well, this is the thing. Like, it's either a case of Montez Ford. Obviously, remember Montez Ford having a singles run being like a newsworthy item about a year, 2 years ago. And it just seems now that they're so far removed from that. But also, I guess they are victims of Street Profits, as are a lot of other tag teams, of this insistence on, the Usos having the tag belt for so long. Because teams like the Street Profits should have been racking up, tag title reigns, with the belts, or one set of the belts at least, and they weren't able to do it because the Usos have the belts for like best part of 2 years. But ultimately, look, the match was inoffensive, but it is very difficult. I was in a group chat with people, and it does just seem like a lot of people, especially casual fans, only care about the Rumble matches on these shows. So it made this match in particular very difficult to kind of think.
I think they did a good job at kind of trying to book it in a way where like every match was a big, like a 2 out of 3 falls match between these two teams is a big match. It's a big story. It's been going on for a long time. it's something that if you saw on NXT and they presented the right way, I'm talking Black and
yeah.
Gold NXT, it would have been the main event. So in that sense, it's like they've done well, but yeah, it's hard not to get lost in the shuffle on the Rumble card anyway. Let's move on to the next match though. Vortex wants to know if we've got any thoughts on Cody versus the KO. As you mentioned there, Gary, Cody, KO even was battered. This was a very, very entertaining match. As much as I went into it thinking, well, of course Cody's going to win, when it was just like the Charlotte situation, really, where I was like, I'm going to be, not offended essentially because I expect Cody to win anyway. As much as I want KO to win, I didn't expect it. Cody did the age-old thing of going under the ladder, and then he went straight through it for his troubles not long after that. And then you got some really cool spots just throughout the whole showing between these two guys, really. And then it got really, really gruesome at the end when you got the pile driver reverse where Kevin landed on the kind of top of the V, essentially, of that ladder laying on the side, which was really gruesome. But the worst was yet to come, essentially, for Kevin Owens, when eventually him and Cody were fighting on the outside. Kevin was bleeding, and Sami Zayn came out to check on them too, which is quite an interesting note. I'm sure we'll get into that in just a moment. And eventually, you had the final spot where Kevin tried to do the package pile driver on the new reinforced announce table. Cody reverses it, hits him with an Alabama slam instead through the ladder, which was so brutal. And Kevin sold it well, man. Like, he laid folded up like a pretzel for some time. That it was quite concerning. And then when they finally lifted him up, the blood had been piling up on the mat as well. So it was quite the visual and quite the kind of brutal match where, yes, Cody won in the end. And yes, I would have loved to have seen Kevin Owens come away with the title. But I got to admit, man, just a really, really entertaining match. And another example of why Kevin Owens deserves more. So, for me, I think it's, a result that means that Kevin Owens doesn't really have much to do after this. Something that probably just suggests that Cody is going all the way to WrestleMania as well. But look, let me know in the comments, guys, what you thought. Lucas is going to be back in just a moment as well. He's going to let us know, of course, his opinion on the match itself. But yeah, keep the comments coming, guys. What did you think of the Kevin Owens versus Cody Rhodes match? Going to get to some of these comments here as well. Vortex agrees with what I'm saying. Casper says Kevin Owens stuck on the ladder was sick. Yeah, that final shot, as I say, him laying like a pretzel, folded up was... pretty rough, right? He's not in a Rumble. I'm saying for Mania if he appears, says Vortex. Yeah, I just don't know what is gonna. Oh, sorry, that was in reference to the comment here. I just missed that one, didn't I? It was the NFL player. There was a comment about the NFL player. Where is it? There we go. Max Crosby. Oh, no, that was a reference to that same comment. There you go. And the Powerbomb WrestleMania you were talking about. There we go. Look, I going back to the Kevin Owens Cody Rhodes match again, I thought it was really, really, really entertaining. Cody battered Kevin Owens. And I just don't know what it means for Kevin next. Like I say, those really, really gruesome spots. But he did hold his own. Like, he did that amazing top rope fisherman buster onto the ladder, onto Cody as well. Like, Cody got battered as well. A lot of back and forth. You had the stunner being counted into the crossroads as well. All in all, man, I just really enjoyed this match. I thought it was a really, really fun showing from the two of them. And one where they really did have to kind of pick up the crowd. As Lucas mentioned a moment ago, we're coming out of a women's Royal Rumble match. We're going into a 2 out of 3 falls, and then we've got a ladder match, and then you've got the men's Royal Rumble, which is what everyone's waiting for at that point as well. So they did a really, really good job in that. And again, the Sami Zayn story was quite interesting to play into it, and then actually meant nothing really when it came to the Royal Rumble. And we were talking earlier on in the build-up stream about how Sami Zayn could potentially win the Royal Rumble because he's got a lot of routes to go down, and we said that about CM Punk, and he didn't win the Rumble either. But Sami Zayn, he's got a lot of storyline potential here, it seems. And now that we've seen his kind of compassion for both Cody and Kevin, but of course leaning more into Kevin, it brings up some questions as far as what they're going to do going forward with them as well. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, because again, Kevin and Sammy deserve something big at Mania. Maybe it's just going to be that. It's going to be those two against each other. The match that, you know, a lot of us, you know, seem to be crying out for every year or so, because it's such a great story to go back to. Vortex says it was not a wrestling match, more like a brawl. Man, they put their bodies out. Yeah, completely agree. It was a really, really hard hitting match, wasn't it? Casper says, don't know where Roman goes from here. Love Roman Reigns, but also want a CM Punk Rumble win. We're going to get to the main event in just a moment, mate, and of course where that leaves CM Punk and Randy Orton's going forward as well. But yeah, Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, like I say, great finish. Really, really enjoyable match overall. And yeah, hopefully something good in the kind of near future for him. Vortex, just let Gary know. A little confused there about the NFL guy. Plays for Las Vegas and is one of the best in the league. Yeah, Las Vegas, of course, host to the WrestleMania 2-night event this year as well. Let's bring Lucas back in the fold and kind of get his opinions really on Cody versus Sami Zayn. What am I saying? Cody versus Kevin Owens with interference, sort of, from Sami Zayn. What are your thoughts on this one, mate? Because again, such a brutal match.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of ladder matches. I think we're spoiled with the fact that obviously we get Money in the Bank twice, 2 Money in the Bank matches, and last year we even got a ladder match at WrestleMania. But I felt that this was, the back end of it was very good. Obviously they had Sami Zayn come out. I was a bit surprised that he didn't do anything though.
Yeah.
You know, there's always little storyline points sometimes where I'm like, sometimes Triple H just stops kind of putting them in for the sake of putting them in, I guess. But I think maybe it did help sell the fact of, you know, Kevin now going to be pissed at his, you know, quote unquote best friend kind of thing for not helping him. But Sammy being the supporting friend, you know, to Kevin, of being like, well, you know, I was just kind of trying to help you kind of thing. But you know, look, the ending was brutal. The ending was absolutely brutal. And yeah, it seems Kevin Owens' Royal Rumble title match luck, or unluck, we say, continues. Yeah, I thought the match was like, yeah, it's kind of hard to get these title matches at the Rumble are so hard to do, because you kind of feel that you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, to make them feel important and to give some jeopardy to it is difficult. And look, as much as we all went into this thinking Kevin ain't winning, like I think everyone would agree, we come out of it thinking great match at least.
Yeah, it was a good match, but I do hope that's that now sorted. I mean, I don't see where else it can really go. Obviously, they've had a good they've had a good time for advertising the Winged Eagle belt, which one would imagine will be some sort of DLC in the new 2K25 game, and will be on action figures at some point this year. You know, but I think, yeah, that has to be it now. It does beg the question, kind of what happens with KO, but then you never really have to worry, really. Like, it does seem, I've said this several times in these streams, people know, I just think that decision that he made to, you know, not to go to AW but to sign with WWE, I think it has just really been good for him. There's only been good stuff since, and I don't see why there wouldn't be any more good stuff. I do worry they might go back to the well of him versus Sami Zayn though, which, while good, it's already kind of had its Mania match. Actually had 2 Mania matches, haven't it, I think, in it. And yeah, I don't really want to go back to that, but you know, if it is, then I'm sure that they'll make it good, you know, another time, as they always do, I guess.
It kind of feels like the backup for both of them, don't it? It feels like we haven't got anything for you, so we'll let you do this together, which is kind of like, well, I can't remember, but there was a match on the build-up show where I remember saying a similar kind of thing, essentially. But yeah, I think both those guys deserve a lot.
It's like, you know, it's like what Cornette says about Reigns and Lesnar. It's just that match that they know always draws, and if in doubt, again, this is pre the lawsuit and the issue that's happening. But if in doubt, and they need to sell tickets, it was just an outside match. Like it just felt like that's what they had to felt those because and and the proof is literally in the pudding, in the sense of every time that match happened, it was big. It did big numbers. Whether that was pay-per-view buys, whether that was tickets sold, whether that was merchandise, it did big numbers. And so that's why they returned to that well like a lot of time with those two. So when you got that big kind of money match or that big money moment, like you're going to keep wanting to put it on. And I think, with and even if it isn't about the money side of things, it's just about, okay, we know this match will just be like, it will just be for a certain section of fans. This is what they want. They want Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, because at the end of the day, that would have been the match. The matches those fans would have been watching before those two were in WWE, and they've done some crazy stuff together. And any newer fans, I do say there was a series of matches they had in Ring of Honor. My God. My God. I mean, some clips, obviously, there's clips were posted the other day, I think, on Instagram. And I was like, damn, this happened. Like, they did some fantastic stuff, So, But obviously, within WWE, they've done some fantastic stuff as well. But I think, Kevin Owens, he will be fine. But it is a very hard slot to do that title match on the Rumble show. Because you're not really the most important person kind of on the show.
It's all about being in the spot that you're currently in, which is wild, isn't it? It's all about becoming number one contender, and you're the number one contender, yet you don't matter because you're not at the show of shows, essentially. A few more comments here. Calvin says, so what's next? Again, we've talked a little bit there about what might be next for Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. What's next on this show is we're going to get to the main event in just a moment. Gary's disappointed because he took holiday for this and stayed up late. Gary, I think it was a good show. Come on, man. I think it was a good show. What we got here? Tony says KO stock don't go down, but he just needs to find him a spot in Mania. Essentially, I pretty much agree with that. I do think he deserves a good spot, and that's the thing, though. If you look at the Rumble, man, we'll get to that in a minute, but it was very heavy at the end of it in star power. Like, there's a lot of great people that deserve big spots, it feels like. Casper says, did really enjoy both Rumble matches, but Becky Lynch missed her at the Rumble. Yeah, surprising not to see her come back. I'd imagine she'll be back in time for Mania, but we'll have to see about that. Stick with us on this channel here. We'll be breaking down all the PLEs as we head towards the road to WrestleMania even further. Citizen says Drew should have eliminated Punk, not Logan, and Hendry should have lasted longer. No, Jade was weird. I hate seeing Nikki Bella, especially at 30. Hey, look, I got to disagree with Nikki Bella. I like seeing Nikki Bella back. I thought it was nice, but I do agree with the rest of that there. Drew eliminated Punk. I guess it kind of leans too far into that conversation that feud, I should say, that we had already for quite some time and had many conversations about. Logan Paul, I think, kind of makes a bit more sense. Hendry, I agree, though, should have lasted longer. And Jade not being there was a bit of a surprise in some sense. Vortex says, no, Gary getting mixed up. He's not talking about, because Gary's talking about how can an NFL guy essentially take the space of someone like The Rock on the show. Is it to sell tickets? And they're basically talking about in the little conversation going on there about the NFL player that might be showing up in Vegas as well. But yes, it would be cool to see The Rock showing up at WrestleMania. I got a feeling he will play some part in it. Let's move on, though, into the men's Royal Rumble match. It's what we start the show out on, and we're going to be ending up on the big stories involving this one. Of course, Jey Uso is your men's Royal Rumble winner. Cannot believe I'm saying that still. We're about an hour removed from it going down, but man, it's still very, very surprising as well. Now, this match started out, number one was Rey, number two was Penta, and it started out so well until we had this very, very awkward spot. And I feel kind of awkward bringing it up, but we've already made a beam about on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling X account. But VAR, because his feet touched the ground, Penta's feet touched the ground, and it was bloody awkward, weren't it? And I felt so bad for him because he's been on fire And he's been so appreciated, but it was a bit of an awkward start. Not long after that, you got the kind of people you'd imagine coming out. Gable, Otis kind of clashing. Gable being linked to Penta's debut as well. And then the big story that comes next is Tozawa being taken out and Speed getting in the match. So let's get into those kind of things first of all. Lucas, what were your thoughts on Penta's introduction to the Royal Rumble, and then on IShowSpeed showing up in the Rumble match itself?
Penta, I'm leave it at this. Like, mistakes happen. They made a call. The referees made a call, and that's what we need to go by. He ended up having a decent showing. There were some nice bits that he did, and I think that he's definitely been ingratiated into the WWE world. On to IShowSpeed. So I'm not familiar really with these people. I'm not the kind of demographic, I guess, for these kind of people, but I can see kind of why they did it. I do think it looks a little bit weak, like him Tozawa just going down to a forearm to the back. Isn't he not meant to be a trained wrestler? Honestly, it was like a chair shot or something. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, whatever. But it is what it is. It happened. But it has led to possibly one of the most memorable moments of the entire show. That spear that Bron Breakker hit.
Oh my gosh!
He hit it like IShowSpeed owed him rent money.
Yeah,
it was insane,
mate.
Like, obviously, without getting too technical with it, there was the position to take moves, and IShowSpeed decided not to be in the position to take the move, but Bron Breakker went, "Screw it, you're taking it anyway."
Yeah, mate.
Sorry, I have to say this as well. I think Bron Breakker's a shout out for MVP in that match as well. Like some of the how that man's not a babyface, I have no idea. Like just seeing the fact that he was able to somehow slide into the ring and hit a spear in one motion, no stopping, no slowing down, one motion, and then was jumping on the top rope, taunting, and then did the Frankensteiner.
It's like
he did not break a sweat.
Exactly, he doesn't run out of energy. And I think last year was in the Rumble as well. And all those great clips of him running around a ring and knocking out Kaiser, when he was in the IC feud with him as well. Like, he's non-stop. The guy has got so much like charisma and kind of just incredible force and speed. Speaking of speed, it was a great moment, and I think it would do wonders for him. Like Speed is a massive star. Like, whether or not you're into streaming and whatever else, he's huge. Like, this will do a lot for WWE and for look. I do think it was weird, like you say, Tozawa went out to the elbow, and then Triple H of all people in the back would go to someone like that. Yeah, get out there. I actually liked the way they did it, but it was like, in storyline, it makes no sense.
Also, he had music and he was there.
Yeah, and why would Triple H ever be desperate? This guy is so pure and like about wrestling, looks after the whole thing. Why would he ever be in a panic where he goes, you go out there when he's got a whole roster? It made no sense in that sense.
A better way to do it could have been maybe IShowSpeed working with Alpha Academy, like maybe on Raw in the week or something, and doing some sort of mock filming of them. Weren't they filming TikTok videos on Raw, weren't they? And Gable stable came over and custom for it. So IShowSpeed were basically that, saying, "Oh, I'm helping him with this." And then when Tozawa came out, he could have came out with IShowSpeed filming him and doing it.
And been like,
and then he gets attacked, and then it's like, "Oh, but you got to go in the match now." Yeah, so it's like, it makes sense why he's come. Why? Because it felt weird. Like, just stood in the corridor.
Like the time when it happened to Becky, and when Becky was like, "Put me in," and Finley was like, "Oh, fine, like go in. We need someone." Like,
it's so difficult. Like, as well, sometimes these things, it's so weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you think as well, like, sure, there's other wrestlers, like we mentioned, the tag team champions, the War Raiders weren't apparently interested in being in the Rumble.
Yeah, they weren't hanging around in Gorilla just waiting for a spot either.
It's a bit. But yeah, I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, it's one of those. It's a memorable moment. It was made good because we've had some poor celebrity ones where they've kind of eliminated themselves, or they've not done anything, or they don't want to get hit, and so they do like a really weak elimination or something. But I think IShowSpeed.
He took it. He took the spear.
He took the spear. He got thrown out the way he did, thrown over the announce table. Because I thought at first he was going to do the Kofi spot of not getting eliminated because he got
Mm.
caught by Otis. I thought Otis might just put him on the table or whatever, and then it'd do something afterwards. But no, yeah, Otis decided to basically yeet him over the announce desk. Then also in the middle section of the Rumble, we got an interesting section where we got to see Jacob Fatu and Roman Reigns in the ring together. And then we got Braun Strowman kind of coming out during this bit. We got quite a lot packed into that middle section. You know, obviously Jimmy Uso, which again we have to kind of discuss him because obviously of who won the match. Because you know there is, in my opinion, there is like a massive difference in the crowd reception between Jimmy and Jey Uso, like ridiculously a lot. And I don't know whether that's because obviously, you know, Jimmy got injured. And you know, Jey obviously was the first one to kind of truly go solo. And obviously Jimmy did the turn, didn't he, his brother and stuff. So I guess he was a bad guy going into that feud. But it just seems that crowds are have really just ingratiated themselves towards Jey over Jimmy.
Massively.
Like
massively.
There's a massive difference.
Yeah.
You know, to the extent that like once Jey came out, it was just night and day, in my opinion.
Like
night and day.
I think, like you say, the injuries and the way they've decided to book him as well. I mean, you got to remember, Jey was the one that became main event Jey Uso, and then went on to face Roman Reigns, and then Jimmy come back and all that kind of stuff. And then Jimmy, you know, all these weird turns when they were in the bloodline. But even in that stage when they were in the bloodline, Jey was still the bigger star. I will give Jimmy credit recently, though. I do think he's, you know, changed up his gear. He's got the whole big gyms thing going on. And I do think that is growing. But yeah, the gap is massive. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about Jey Uso, I'm sure, at the end of it. But as you said, that middle chunk with Jimmy Uso, Roman Reigns, and Jacob Fatu, and then Braun Strowman in the mix as well, was kind of a fascinating middle bit to kind of sink our teeth into, like one of those many different stories that happen in throughout it.
Many different possible stories. Obviously, we got to see Jacob Fatu lock horns with Bron Breakker. We got to see Jacob Fatu lock horns with Sheamus. You know, there's so much potential. You know, I'm going to go on record and I don't know, like this is a bold kind of thing for me, but I do genuinely believe that Jacob Fatu might be the most important signing they've made in quite some time.
Wow.
I think that they've got a star there.
Yeah.
At the moment, you know, sometimes things are overhyped, sometimes things are over the top. But when they did say that when Roman and Jacob, you know, faced off, and they said we're looking at a future WrestleMania main event, I was like, yeah.
I was surprised they said that.
I was like,
you know,
you know, I think the whole story, you know, especially when you listen to obviously how Heyman paints it, obviously, you know, with Heyman, there's always that kind of like kayfabe and reality kind of all blurred into one. But it is literally like, you know, these animals have come in, you know, the WWE previously, they took like the cream of the crop, didn't they? They took, you know, the nice little Kishi's nice little boys, you know, I wouldn't say boo to a goose. They took, you know, they took Joe Anoa'i, they turned him into Roman Reigns, you know, via, you know, using the independent wrestlers, who, you know, John Moxley and, you know, Tyler Black, who became Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose respectively, you know, using their kind of cred to kind of help him, and they cut him into what they need to cut him into. Remember, it took them a long while with Roman Reigns. If you forget, you know, we're all like loving the OTC now and wearing merchandise, but 5 years ago that would have got you in trouble. Do you know what I mean? Like, with some wrestling fans,
I'll be one of them, mate. I'll be looking down on anyone wearing a Roman Reigns shirt 5 years ago, 6 years ago. You know, there wasn't much love for the big dog. But now I'm putting my ones up any chance I get. But you're right.
The new Samoans though are people who WWE wouldn't touch with a barge pole. Like the old regime would not touch. You know, wouldn't touch Jacob Fatu or either of the Tongans. You know,
I mean the Usos were never designed to be in a position they're in, especially Jey. Jey's just, I mean, again, we'll get to it, but Jey's just won the Royal Rumble. Like there is like and I'm not trying to be like I've been a day one, you know, fan and all that, and just kind of really overhype it, but I genuinely have always enjoyed the work of the Usos,
but it's bonkers. I think you have to, you know, if we're comparing them with other tag teams or other brother tag teams, it is like Matt Hardy or Jeff Hardy winning the Rumble. It's that level, because obviously other people have been in tag team previously and then obviously split and then found success, like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, etc. But they were at the start, or at one point, still singles wrestlers, and then were really part of a tag team, then split up and did singles feuds. And that blueprint's worked for a lot of people. But, you know, we're talking about people who you almost, it feels unfathomable to be, you know, for it to be like, you know, them to be separate. And don't get me wrong, the Hardys, to be fair, you know, they had very good singles runs individually. You know, with Jeff obviously becoming, you know, WWE champion, Matt Hardy winning a few mid-card titles in the company. But, you know, and they were, you'd argue, I guess, probably the blueprint for this, in the sense of like, that's the kind of like what you're aiming for. But it is, in a weird way, you know, could Jey Uso at least eclipse that, like with this Rumble win, with potentially a title win down the road? You know, in the era, and more importantly, in the era that we're in. Like, don't forget, a lot, you know, as much as we may love the Hardys, a lot of Matt Hardy's like singles runs were in, you know, times where the business wasn't as hot as it was now. Do you know what I mean? Like, people, you know, Matt Hardy wins like the ECW championship. Like, come on, like, you know, back when that brand was dying a death. With that awful silver belt. But yeah, like, I think it's mad to think that's where they came from. And when you see the evolution of the Usos, you know, through the face paint, and, you know, being managed by Tamina, and then into the era where they feuded with like the New Day and stuff, and we're having like just really, really good solid tag matches to obviously what they've become now. Like, it is bonkers. But yeah, then obviously, we did get that section where we got Cena and Punk back to back, and Rollins as well, I think, around that time.
Man, they stacked that section up.
That last bit where we had like, you know, Damian Priest, and obviously Logan Paul at number 30, which I just touch upon and say I think it's actually quite genius. I think, end of the day, you know it's not going to be a surprise. You know that you need to put a villain in there, and who better than Logan Paul in that respect? Because you know, with respect, you're going to get those people who are just conditioned to boo it regardless. So that way you're covering your back. It's like, well, he's a bad guy, so you're booing him. Because because obviously they announced the people, I guess they wanted to announce. But
because you start adding up at the end, don't you? You start going, who's definitely going to be in it, you know, and how many surprises do we have left? And it became apparent there weren't really any. And then Logan's music hit, and I had actually forgot about him, and like you said, it kind of created that kind of, oh, okay, of course it's Logan, I can't be too disappointed. But if you wanted to boo, it was there for you. But like you say, that last kind of bit was just so heavily stacked. You had Sami Zayn in there as well. John Cena came in at number 23. AJ Styles returned with his original theme song, as far as WWE goes, at least, as well, which so much better, so cool, nice little moment for him as well. And then it did really you got Logan Paul doing the Kofi Kingston spot as well, by the way. That was quite cool to see. And then it really did start to knuckle down and get to that final kind of set of kind of segments, really. So of course we'll get to the end of it very soon, but before that, a big surprise, man. Logan Paul throws out CM Punk. Seth goes out the ring with Roman as well, and then stomps Roman, turns heel basically by doing that, and then stomps him again on the steel steps. And there's melee on the outside. You know, CM Punk's getting involved. You've got Paul Heyman get involved as well. This, to me, has now set up a triple threat between these three at WrestleMania, which I did not see happening. It is basically, add Moxley to the mix. This is a Shield kind of anger management, family therapy situation going on here. Very, very surprised to see this. And it's a shame that Moxley won't be a part of it. But what were your thoughts on basically those guys not winning it and the way it came about?
Yeah, I think they've quite clearly kind of said that, in layman's terms, this is kind of what's going to happen at Mania. We're going to get to that another way, because obviously, you know, they had other plans, and again, we'll get to that other plan. But I think that this is possibly a way to go, because I guess they can do Punk and Rollins again. I do think that they could be missing out on a big money match, though, between Reigns and Rollins, which, again, how much of a lot of this is down to The Rock's lack of involvement at the moment, we could say, with the card, because it does then mean, if we accept that this triple threat is taking place, that we're not seeing Reigns and The Rock this year. Or not a Mania, at least, which, you know, to some people, you know, that felt like it was very, very much on the cards, you know, following last year. But it does seem that that's maybe not happening. But I do think that the way this was done was very good. It was very good. The stomps looked extra vicious for some reason. And Heyman, obviously being Heyman, his reaction to it all was fantastic. And Punk's reaction to it as well was also fantastic. And it does seem like we're in that situation where all three men just hate each other, kind of thing. But it'd be interesting seeing how they plot this and plan this, though, because I can't think of a time they've done like a triple threat that's not been for a championship or for something.
Yeah.
You know, like what's at stake here, you know, which again, that's where the story leads. It could also just be a way to obviously get to the chamber, you know, because if they need to have the rivalries for the chamber. Or there's various things that it could be. But I thought it was all done really, really well. I thought that the whole back end of the Rumble was done really well. And I think we saw like who eliminated Shinsuke Nakamura?
I don't know. He was only in it for a few minutes, wasn't he? Was it
But I'm pretty sure whoever eliminated him, I went straight away, that's gonna be his next feud.
Right. I can't remember now.
Like I think they did set up like a lot of things like that, like in this match.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier with the Jacob for two stuff, they set up a lot of stuff that he could do. So there's I forgot about the Fatu and John Cena stay off as well. Like my God, like there's some money matches if that's going to happen. But I thought that whole segment was really, really very good. I think Logan Paul being the person to eliminate, obviously CM Punk and he eliminated Punk. But Punk and Reigns eliminated Andrew McIntyre.
Didn't Seth go out with Reigns by Punk?
Oh, that's it. Seth and Reigns by Punk, and then Punk by Logan.
Yeah,
and then before that, Drew got eliminated by Logan Paul. Okay, but I think that was probably the right call to do. I think at the end of the day, like we could be all year about with people arguing that Logan Paul should be this, shouldn't be that, blah blah. But at the end of the day, he is what he is, and he is where he's at, and the reaction he gets, and the social media traction that the guy gets is enough to warrant the spot that he's got. And so I think, and he's always that kind of guy where I guess it's always going to get a reaction him eliminating someone, isn't it? So it's a case of
don't matter who it is.
But also, am I the only one that feels I'm kind of done with the Drew and Bloodline thing now? Like just get over it.
Yeah, I think the character, we're supposed to feel that about the character anyway, but the danger is they step into the audience also feeling that way about like, but no, we actually don't want to see you talking about it anymore, So, there is that. Before we dive further into the kind of last moments of the Rumble and start wrapping up here, just going to get to a few comments before we do. Casper says, do you ever see Punk winning the Royal Rumble match? He's 46 now, which is wild to hear that number if that is the case. But I don't know, man. I don't know.
He can't win next year. It's in Saudi Arabia, so he won't be there.
He might not be there. Look, I thought, I forgot next year's in Saudi. Oh wow. Okay. Anyway, that's another podcast for another day. But maybe not. Then maybe not. I was really surprised. Like I said, I saw so many routes for Punk. And one I didn't see was a triple threat between him, Rollins and Reigns for no title, which we might not get. As you say, it might just been simply to get to Elimination Chamber. There's a long way to go to Rumble, so maybe that isn't the case. But we'll have to see with that as well. So WWE think this is better than Pete Dunne. Yeah, no Pete Dunne in this show. There was a lot of omissions really from the Royal Rumble, but again, it just really shows that again a big old roster. Speed, not a big fan is Gary of
Gary. Can you tell us anything you didn't like?
He does bark like a dog. Vortex says when it was Jey versus Cena Rumble, I was dying internally because I wanted John to win, but my yeet addiction was getting powerful. Look, I'm going to talk about my conflicting emotions about that in just a moment. Thanks for that comment once again, Vortex as well. Says it would love to see Cody versus Logan in a saving yourself matchup. John Morrison add for the mix there as well. Casper says I was surprised Jey probably liked a lot. So I was surprised for Jey, probably like a lot of us winning Rumble, but he's over with the crowd. I'm glad someone different win it in the end. I was glad it wasn't Cena. Look, that's the way I'm leaning, if I'm honest. Little spoiler for my kind of main thoughts on that in a moment. My main reason, says Sludge, I wanted to be in the Rumble was Pete Dunne and took down A-Town Down Under, but it is what it is. Yeah, it was a shame not to see them. Roxanne Perez, yeah, seemingly got the Iron Woman kind of claim there to the Royal Rumble as well. So yeah, great for her. What else do we have here in the for Penta's first ever Rumble? Did a solid job. Yeah, minus that awkward spot, which I feel bad bringing up, but you kind of have to. But yeah, it was nice. He did very well for how long he was in there. Jey really broke out the mold, says Vortex, of being a tag star and becoming his own star. That's just beautiful, man, to see. Jey become the main event. Jey, I mean, he really is now. He's literally going to be in the main event at WrestleMania. Yes, I know he was as a tag team star, but we know what it is when you're really in the main event, and it looks like they're giving him that spot. Will it be against Gunther? I've heard on a press conference he's kind of alluding to that, but also said he might have to go after Cody as well. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, the fight on the sideline was pretty underwhelming. Looked more like two siblings fighting each other as 5-year-olds than an actual brawl, says Vortex. Logan is jokes, says Gary. Casper says, never always been a big fan of Sami Zayn. Gary still doesn't get what I mean about Seth turning heel. So I guess it's hard to see in some ways because Roman is kind of a heel himself in some ways, but also kind of a babyface. But I think, yeah, him stomping Roman was basically him losing control and let his emotion kind of get over him a little bit there as well. I think
it'd be very hard for Seth to say that. Just about that from a baby.
Exactly, yeah. Even though, like, as all good heels do, they usually have a good point, but you know, it is that. Casper says, really enjoyed the show, feeling a bit burnt out with the filler matches, but both filler matches around the Rumble were really good. But enjoyed both Rumble matches, especially, it seems. Vortex says, I think Punk fighting Rollins and Roman's being knocked out was amazing, crafted really well. My one criticism was the brawl between Seth and Punk. Scotty, did you say bark like a dog? No, I said bark like a dog with speed, of course. Nobody remembers Sami Zayn 2017 Royal Rumble. We entered number 8 and made it to the final 6. He eliminated Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar. Yeah, so yeah, surprising that Sami didn't have a big role in the Rumble. It was more about that match of Kevin Owens versus Cody Rhodes. But hey, before we get out of here, let's really dive into what we saw at the end of the night, of course, which was the victory from Jey Uso. Look, Lucas, I gotta be honest, man. When they ended up with Jey, Logan, and Cena, I kind of wanted to stop watching because look, they saved it with how they went about it in the end. But I didn't want either of them like to win because I'm not. Look, Logan shouldn't be winning it. Jey Uso had a title match last week, and John Cena doesn't need it. Now, out of the three of them, eventually ended up being Jey Uso, and I was happy the way it went down. But I still maintain that Jey Uso had a title match last week, so it's a bit weird for me. But look, judging by what he's done the past few years, does he deserve to win the Royal Rumble in that sense? Yeah, I would say so. I think he's, that what we always like to see in the Money in the Bank and the Royal Rumble is someone breaking into that next level by doing it. And I thought, yeah, he kind of fits that mold. I liked how they did the final two between him and Cena, but when it did get to him and Cena, I was really getting frustrated thinking it's obviously Cena. I was getting annoyed at the fact it was a babyface versus babyface. I thought if Cena wins, how can he do that to Jey when everyone loves Jey? If Jey wins, how can he do that to Cena when everyone wants the fairy tale year? But they actually managed to put it off to their credit quite well. Cena coming in and congratulating Jey, of course, helped with that as well. But I was so ready to come on air and be like, he's done it again. As I said on the build-up show, it wouldn't be a John Cena farewell tour if he didn't annoy me. Look, as much as I like Cena and appreciate him now, we cannot escape the fact that he was overly booked. He was annoying. They did bury too many stars. They did waste opportunities. And look, while I'll say I've got over that in quite a way, like when he showed up at Money in the Bank in London, we all blew our minds, and we were all excited to see him. I'm just so glad to see him back. He deserves the Hall of Fame and all that stuff. Yes, but those things are still true. 2008 to 2014 or whatever time frame you want to pick, essentially, that did happen. We cannot forget that. And I was actually scared that it was like, are we really going to dedicate his whole year to him actually winning all the time again? And I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad it's going down a route that we predicted a few weeks ago, that it might be him kind of getting close each time. But I was just very confused when it ended up being him and Jey Uso at the end, because I thought, yeah, Cena versus someone like Drew, for example, would have made more sense. But that was, anyway, that's a lot of word vomit there. Unpack it how you will, Lucas. What are your thoughts on the way it kind of went down at the end with Cena and Jey Uso?
So yeah, I see what you mean about the final three being who they were. But I guess maybe they did that to tease the Cena and Logan being the final two. And then once Logan went, it was like, oh, that big reveal of like, oh wow, it's actually going to be Jey and Cena. And obviously they have been much more relaxed in recent times about this whole face villain dynamic. And obviously sometimes at the detriment to some styles, because some people it's like, are they babyface? Are they villain? Like genuinely, like when Andrade came out, I was like, he's a villain, right? And then I was like, no, he's babyface. Okay, if you say so. Because it just seems that there's a lot of things don't add up for these things. But I think end of the day, I just go back to this being like how I see it is I think a plan has changed this week with this match. And I might even go and say this weekend, like imminently within like the last 24 to 48 hours. I don't know, something about that, how it all went down, just felt like something has changed. And I think obviously the main thing that has changed may be obviously The Rock's involvement in WrestleMania. And I think obviously something which obviously seems to be going doing the rounds is that obviously he's got a spot obviously whenever he needs it, because and the writers are basically like always ready to put him into whatever he wants to be put in, because he is obviously an executive and he can just do what he wants essentially. And obviously there was that horrible rumor that was going around about him being number 31. That thankfully didn't happen. But you know what did happen, and so again, we have to just go with what did happen. So what did happen is we got a final two in the Rumble of Jey Uso and John Cena, and I'm pretty certain that everyone in Indianapolis, everyone that was watching, all thought that John Cena was winning, and they teased the hell out of that. They teased and teased. They gave John Cena his big spots. They gave Uso his big spots in the ring. They got to the apron. They fought out on the apron. They tried to climb back in. You know, they did in, out, shake it all about. And yeah, they really built up that drama. And that's something which, to be fair, they've got much better at doing over the past like 10 years or so. But then again, it has obviously led to these really lengthy rumbles that we're seeing nowadays. But yeah, the drama was there. And then what I liked about the finish is that it was the accident, but was also still quite big. And because obviously, you know, John Cena, he went for the AA on Jey Uso. Jey slides back into the ring behind John, and as John was almost about to get in the ring, Jey pushed him off, and that was it. And it was almost reminiscent, to be fair, of when Sheamus pushed him off a table to win his first.
Yeah. Just that tiny slip that makes a big difference, you know.
Yeah. You know, and it's just one of those where, and I think, you know, the way it was done, yeah, I'll be honest, it actually brought a bit of a tears to my eye, to be fair, because it kind of made me realise that Cena in his last year, like he seemingly still wants to put, he now wants to put people over, like he now wants to, you know, that's what it felt like to me. And I don't know, you know, again, like a lot of these things need to align, you know, at once, it seems, but you know, it does seem maybe, you know, The Rock not being involved in Mania, and if Cena's still going to be involved in the title match, he might have just felt, well, why don't I give this moment to someone else, or why, you know, or maybe create it for it. You never know, but it just feels very, I guess as well with Cena being the favourite as well. Like I don't know how much of that played into it, but also I think Jay's phenomenal reaction and reception he got at Saturday night's main event cannot be understated. Like it was insane. And Raw this week, Meaty's promo was insane, and I think I'd like to just think now when the company we're in now on deaf to the fans' reaction, you know, and to the fans' voice. And so, yeah, I just think something on this week, all those things combined, essentially, have led to the moment we got. And I still can't decide whether I like it or not. Like, it's one of those where, you know, I think potentially if he hadn't have had the title match last week, it might feel a bit different. Obviously, he hadn't had a title match, but now he has.
Yeah.
But then I also think that if they decide to do a good story with this, there is actually like a good story they could tell, you know, him coming off the back of that loss. It almost feels a bit like Rocky 2, because I guess not forget, you know, Rocky, he didn't win. He didn't win it. You know, Sylvester Stallone wrote a movie an Oscar-nominated movie as well, that he decided the good guy wasn't going to win at the end. Deliberately did that. And then did a second movie where the good guy finally wins. And I kind of get a feeling this is where we're going with it. The first part, we saw what happened. And with the storytelling that they've got at the moment, the people that, and the performers, I think we could be in for quite a moment. But I think ultimately, I don't know who had Jey Uso on their predictions with this. I don't know. I've not heard his name be mentioned with this. It's mad.
Look, I think you're right. When he won the IC, it was massive, and several times he went for the world titles. Even with Roman, it was huge as well. And the time he didn't win the IC because of Jimmy, it was massive. So I think you're right. Like the moment of him winning, and bearing in mind if he does go after Gunther, would be big as well because it'd be ending a historic reign as well. Look, as much as last week is frustrating that we've already seen it, like they can work with it, right? So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. What I do think they will create a moment, and I actually think he will win. Whatever he goes for now. I mean, it can't be Cody. It has to be Gunther. By the way, Gunther has done a tweet where he just said, I think it says something like, "I wouldn't." ... as in like I guess saying I wouldn't come after me. Speaking of tweets, I want to quickly throw over to this one as well from Akira Tozawa. He said what did he say? This is my first time making an entrance at the Royal Rumble. Next year I want to take it even one step closer to the ring. Thank you. Another thing I want to quickly show as well, and this is again a big reason why they do these crossover things. You've got Speed here really selling what's happened to him. By the way, you can't see it in this image, but I mean it's a funny picture anyway. But he's got a nasty gash on his leg, so he really took one for the team on this one here as well. So great social media interaction essentially that WWE are going to get from these, and some great stories coming out of the Royal Rumble. Before we wrap up though, we're going to get to some of these comments and then we will start kind of heading to bedtime for me and Lucas because it's coming up to 5 a.m. for us here in the UK. Vortex says agreed. I'm a little bit biased on John Cena winning the Rumble, but either way it was an intense matchup and it was great either way. I was if it was setting up if I was setting it up, I wouldn't do Jey and Cena again. You're right, it was a completely different way from everybody predicting, right? As you say, beggars can't be choosers. Gary says Scott shoulders looks. I'm not getting big. I'm not working out, Gal. My arm. I'm just leaning on a desk there. Thanks for making me sound good though. Casper says it's a shame CM Punk won't be at the Royal Rumble next year. Another year passes and 2026 won't be a Royal Rumble win for CM Punk. Hope it's still with the company. That's why he left last time. Yeah, it is weird that this whole they played into the WrestleMania thing, and then he's going to be in, it seems, a triple threat that's unrelated. Jey versus Gunther versus Tony potentially is the match we're going to see. I do think it is the one that's likely at the moment. Casper says, but Punk can pull in a favor from Paul Heyman. Yeah, they talked about that as well quite a lot over this weekend, and they didn't do anything with it. Sludge says, overall, this show was a 6 out of 10. I would rate it a little bit higher than that, I'd say. I think it was quite an enjoyable one. I think it's going to be one of those that take a little bit of time to unpack and see where we go on the road to WrestleMania a little bit further now as well. But we are well and truly on that road. Elimination Chamber is next, and we'll be covering that in depth as well. Talking about in depth, we've gone over an hour here on this stream, but we did over about 6 hours on our build-up stream earlier on. So thank you for everyone that tuned in tonight and for everyone that tuned in earlier tonight and those that joined for our predictions and our kickoff watch along and our weekend kickoff stream on Friday as well. Really do appreciate you. We've grown the channel over the weekend as a result, and we always appreciate that, guys, when new people join us and when old faces hop back into the chat as well. Really do enjoy having you with us. Again, shout out to the Give Me a Hole Yeah and WrestleSphere boys, our friends from the wrestling media that joined us earlier on tonight as well. Go and follow those guys on their channels. Been a pleasure talking to you, Lucas, mate. Overall, final thoughts on the Royal Rumble. Did you enjoy it? And was it higher than the 6 out of 10 that Sludge gives it?
Yeah, I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. It's a very long show. But I think the Rumble matches in particular were very good. Particularly the men's one was very good this year, actually. We've got a lot of kind of direction going into Mania, which is good. And, we were surprised at the end, and I think that's a good thing. It's a good surprise.
Talking about surprise, Gary's giving it an 8 out of 10, even though he seemingly hated everything on the show.
I think he's got to be
Casper says, what are your next live? Look, not entirely sure, Casper, but we will 100% be here as much as we can around Elimination Chamber. I know that's a fair bit away now, a few weeks, of course, but we'll try and hit you with some streams before that as well, if we can. Of course, on the channel, we've got loads of content for you to dig your teeth into, whether you want to do a 2002 watch along of 2003, I should say, watch along of SummerSlam, whether you want to watch us talk about the Shield and whether or not they're the greatest faction of all time, whether or not you want to hear us talk about the Hall of Fame ceremony and how it needs to be fixed, or if you want to say interviews with the likes of Santos Escobar and who else can we say, LA Knight, then check out more of the content on this channel. 9 out of 10 says Casper. Long show despite not Becky Lynch. You're really upset about Becky Lynch, I can tell that, buddy. Look, I'm disappointed she's not back, but I'm sure she will be joining us back in WWE very, very soon. I hope you'll all be joining us on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel in the near future. But I've been Scott. This one over here has been Lucas. Thank you very much. And I really hope you've enjoyed Royal Rumble. We'll see you on the next one.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.